Justin, welcome to the Virtual CMO Podcast. Very glad you could join us today.
Thanks for having me, Eric. I appreciate it.
We get a chance to dive in, talk about some of my favorite topics today with a fellow podcaster, so that's always exciting. I'm excited to talk about this because, we had a discussion the other day, and I know you truly get this idea of a buyer's journey, and more than that, just what it means to have a comprehensive journey that continues on past the sale and into the service side of the business.
Right.
I really want to dive into that a little bit today. But just to kick things off, can you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and also briefly mention your podcast as well?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm Justin Varuzzo, and I am currently a director of marketing at a music company called Paul Effman Music. We essentially provide band programs and orchestral programs to private schools and Catholic schools, parochial schools across the nation, actually. And it's it was a need that these schools can't afford full-time music instructors, a lot of them. So it's more or less like an outsourced band where we provide the instructor, the instruments, and the kids get to learn music. So it's a nice business to be in. Yeah, it's a feel good business.
Yeah.
And I started very early on as a teacher. I've been there for 20 years and then have kind of worked my way up, and now I do all of the marketing, and we now have retail stores, and we've grown a lot and gotten into a lot of different things over the years. So it's been a fun adventure.
So I'm curious, when you started up the Marketing and Service Podcast, what was really the thought process behind that? Why did you focus on marketing and service together? Because typically you don't see that, even though I think we both realize how important it is.
Yeah. So the thing that really led me down that road was that I started thinking to myself, what is the best customer service experience I've ever had? Because like anyone who owns a business or runs a business, or if you're in marketing, it's good to kind of sit down and think about, like, what are the good things that I've experienced in my personal life, and how can I recreate that experience?
Yes.
And I could think of one in particular, and then I started thinking, well, let's start listing them all out. And at number 2 probably took about 10 minutes to come up with, and I couldn't come up with a third one. So I started asking people around me, hey, Eric, what's your best customer service? What's your second best? And almost nobody I've ever spoken to can actually name 3 times that they've had good customer service, which is insane in a world where we engage in dozens of transactions a day, right? You get your gasoline in the morning, you get your cup of coffee, you might go out somewhere for lunch, you go buy something at a store, you get a gift for your spouse. So there's all these things that you do. And the fact that in America, where all these companies say they're rooted in service, yet we can't come up with 3 examples of really being wowed and impressed by a company's service. So that kind of led me down this road of, that's something I think I'm on a podcast about, and hopefully at the end, it'll make the world a little bit better of a place if just a few companies can work on their service a little bit.
Well, I love the way you frame that, because I bet if you switch that question around, name 3 bad experiences that you've had this week, I bet people could explain 3 bad experiences they've had today.
Yeah, we could go on for hours.
Yeah. And it's sad, because I think personally, I wonder why more businesses aren't learning, because there is such a chance to differentiate yourself from the competition by delivering that service level that customers are clamoring for, but so many don't.
Right. Yeah, they really don't. And it's the good news is it's an amazing opportunity for small businesses and medium-sized businesses. And I mean, honestly, it's a big opportunity for big businesses too, but we know how in the bigger the business, the more bureaucracy and the harder it is to make those changes happen. But for small businesses, it really is a nice differentiating opportunity for them to leverage to grow their business and to grow better customer relationships and really improve that entire customer experience, because it's going to be, in a lot of ways, a lot easier for a small business to do that and do it consistently than having a mega corporation with thousands of support personnel and marketers and sales staff and trying to get them all on board. It's a much bigger challenge.
So to play devil's advocate a bit, I can hear fellow marketers out in the audience saying, well, I agree with this. This makes a lot of sense, but Justin, I'm in marketing. I'm not in service. How can I affect service as a marketer?
Yeah. So one of the biggest things is really having especially in a bigger organization. A lot of organizations will have their marketing department, they'll have their sales department, and they'll have their service department. And in so many companies, they really don't interface with one another, right? There's like firewalls between them. And I think the more you can get those three elements together, and the more you can have common goals and common strategies, and actually speak to one another, because I think we've all been in a position. If you're a salesperson, you've certainly been in a position where you see a commercial for your own product and you think to yourself, that doesn't do that. Why are they advertising it like that? And if you're a service person, you've certainly been in a position where a salesperson has made a promise to a customer, and now a month later they're coming to you and you're saying, hey, I don't know who told you that, but that piece of equipment can't do that. That's not going to happen. So we see this all the time. And, again, at a small business level, it's really easy to get everyone on the same page. If you've got, 3 or 4 technicians, you've got 2 or 3 salespeople, and, you got one guy in your marketing department, it's real easy to have that alignment. But as things scale, it becomes increasingly more difficult if it's not really addressed, and if that focus isn't around making sure that those 3 groups of people work together and cohesively with a common goal, strategy, and plan to move forward.
Listeners of this show know that I'm a big fan of HubSpot. And for many years, HubSpot was very much advocates of this whole idea of the buyer's journey, which, of course, we talk about a lot on the show. But when you talk about a buyer's journey, you tend to think of something that's fairly linear. And the reality is people like HubSpot realized this, several years ago, that it's really not a linear progression. They termed, flywheel. It's a circular progression, because a customer who buys your product and then needs service for that product may come back and buy other things. And so it's this loop that gets created. What are your thoughts on that?
So I love that you brought that up, because the one thing is, most businesses view service as an expense, right? They're not
Yes.
income generators. They're not the rainmakers in the business, but there is such a huge opportunity to turn that around. And they can be, for exactly the reason you just said. Someone has a problem, they come back. If service can, I'm not saying replace the sales staff or the sales process, but if they're trained to a capacity where they can make recommendations and suggestions and cross sells and upsells at the time of service, it works. They will generate revenue in a service call, and you just don't see that very often. And I'm not sure why. I mean, I have some ideas why. I mean, obviously, it's hard to train a customer service center with 500 operators to also be great salespeople. But there's always that. Every time I've ever had a phone call with a client or a customer, and it's been a phone call that's been because of a problem. At some point in that conversation, we usually figure something out about how we can better provide that product or service to that customer. And they are usually happy to have what they need to make everything work, right? Like we're doing this podcast here, right? You've got the microphone, you've got this stand that the microphone is on, you've got it plugged into a computer. You need all those things for it to work. So if you went to a store and you said, I want to do a podcast and I want to buy this microphone, and they just hand you the microphone and you leave, now you get home and you don't have what you need. And then you call service and say, well, how do I plug this thing in? They say, oh, you need a cable. Are they actually capable of selling you the cable at that moment and say, yeah, we have it. Let me put the order in for you and I'll get it to you. And a lot of times they don't. They're going to say, oh, let me transfer you to the sales department. And, then they start this whole cycle over again. It becomes a very frustrating experience.
Well, and I think that everything gets mixed in together. How many times have you been online trying to purchase something, and maybe there's a problem, there's an error, there's a question that you have about shipping or stock, and you need to call in? That's not necessarily an interaction with their sales department. That may be an interaction with their service department, but it's pre-sale. You're actually helping that customer buy. And so the roles tend to meld together and get a little fuzzy.
Yeah. So one of my favorite examples about that is way back when we were looking for a shipping solution, and we basically wanted to get that tape that Amazon uses, right? The nylon reinforced tape,
Yeah.
and it's water activated. And I knew nothing about this at the time, but I knew that it was good tape and it would hold a box together. And I remember actually watching videos on how it was used. These were post-sale. I mean, they were designed for post-sale support. If you bought this product, this is how you assemble it, right? And fast forward to today, now you see YouTubers with unboxing videos, and this is like a thing. But if a company takes the moment to create the content, think about the power of that content. You showing an unboxing or an assembling or a setup of a product or a service, you're going to be able to use that with your customers after you sell them. And they're going to be very happy that they have the support they need. But it's also going to be an acquisition tool, because there's going to be people like me who want a more in-depth curiosity about what it is. Well, how does this work? How does this thing work? How does it actually go together? How does it fit into this workflow? Now you've got this great piece of content that you're going to use. It's going to be in the acquisition phase. You can use it in the support phase, and it's there, and people will really appreciate it. And you're creating a better value in that journey. And like you said, if someone has an issue on your website, if there's a technical issue, they need to easily be able to get past that and get in touch with somebody who can actually help them through, not just an IT tech support that's not really going to be able to offer them any help other than we'll work on the website or we'll open up a ticket for that.
I think that's such an excellent point, because when we talk about things like buyer's journey, it makes a little bit of an assumption that people are going to go step 1, step 2, step 3, and that's not really the way it works. You may anticipate that somebody's going to come to your website, they're going to look at your product page, they're going to download a piece of collateral, they're going to read that, they're going to come back, they're going to follow up, they're going to fill out a contact form, but maybe they don't do that at all. Maybe they see, like you said, a YouTube video, or somebody does a review, or your product is mentioned in a blog article, and they come in a different way. You can't necessarily anticipate all that, but in marketing, part of our job is to have all of that content available to them so that they can come in where they want and get exposed to the product the way they want.
Yeah, if that marketing strategy is done right from the content perspective, you always hear content is king. If you've got that strategy in place, those little snippets, they can be repurposed over and over and over. A great example I like to use is Dave Ramsey, the financial guy, right? 6 baby steps. He's been touting that for 20 years and has built $1 billion empire over literally 6 things you could write on a little napkin, taking that same content and repurposing it over and over and over, and a million different books and videos and seminars. But it's literally just these little baby steps over and over again. And that is how we should kind of treat our marketing assets in the same way. How can we repurpose these to maximize our time as the marketer and as the company, and provide the best value to the customer at the same time?
What's interesting too about what you're saying there is that as you're repurposing this content, using it in different ways, or maybe you're having content that was created for another purpose, a post-sale how-to video or something like that. Mm-hmm. If you have analytics in place, if you're able to really do a good job of tracking how this information, this collateral might be used, you may spot a weakness in your marketing strategy, that maybe you're not explaining your product well enough, that people don't have all the information that they need from your marketing materials to be able to fully understand what your product or service does. So sometimes these other assets can give you real clues as to what you may need to adjust within your own marketing messaging.
Yeah, to piggyback that, one of the things that I always do, I had a background in IT for a while, and whenever I'm looking at a new solution, something like HubSpot or whatever piece of software we might be looking into, the first place I always go are the user forums, because that's where the truth is being told, right? I want to hear what are the actual customer experiences, not the marketing on the website, but what's in the back end here, like what's really going on. Are these people happy? Are they all complaining? How's the service? Are they complaining they can't get answers to questions? And you learn a lot about a company when you see that back door of their product, and you see what the users are actually discussing, and you can certainly learn a lot of insights from that. And again, I think even in a small business, it's easy when you have 5, 6, 7 people working for those insights not to get back to you as the marketer or as the business owner. Someone might call and say, hey, this thing has XYZ problem. Oh, okay. Well, let me spend a few minutes and we'll get this worked out. Next day, someone else gets that same call. Oh, we'll take a few minutes and work this out. Next day, the third person gets that same call, but there's not really that cohesive strategy where one person's going to come back and say, oh, hey, we're getting calls all the time on this one thing.
Yes.
But the solution could be a 30-second YouTube video that you shoot on your phone. And now not only you're going to cut your service time, because now when you get that inquiry, you can just say, here's the video, step-by-step instructions on how to do it. Thanks. Have a great day. And it's been such a, looking at forums and looking at the what people are saying is such an easy way, especially when they're common issues, to say, hey, okay, let's make a video about this. Let's put this somewhere that's easy to find. Let's work on a little SEO on the service side of our content as opposed to the marketing and the acquisition side.
Another missed opportunity when it comes to service is I think a lot of service interactions are a great potential opportunity to sell the customer something else. I think about the example of a mobile phone. I've got an AT&T mobile phone. Well, believe me, if I didn't have AT&T internet service, they would certainly ask me about it, right? They said,
Oh,
who are
yeah.
you using for your internet, right? They know that that's an upsell opportunity. But many times, if I go to a website of a vendor that I'm doing business with, I'm pounded constantly with messages that are completely out of context. It's every time I log in, they seem to want to sell me something. And that I don't think is a really great time to do it because there's no context to it. You're just basically logging into the system. But sometimes when you have a service interaction, especially when you've solved a problem for the customer and they're leaving that interaction with a positive view of your company, that's an ideal time to ask them some questions and see what else you might be able to do for them.
Yeah, I'll say in my experience, the biggest advocates that we have and the most brand loyal people that we have are the ones that had something go wrong, usually horribly wrong, and we were able to address it very quickly and do it in a way that they don't just have their problem solved, but they really become a brand ambassador after that, because the expectations, this is why I said at the beginning about that potential for small businesses where they can really exploit this. The expectations in America are so low with service that it almost takes no effort to win someone over forever simply by answering the phone. They don't even expect that. They expect they're going to wait on hold for at least 40 minutes and listen to music. So you answer the phone and you solve their problem in one phone call. It's like you've just created one of those top 3 of their customer service experiences.
That's right. And it's a perfect opportunity to see if you can meet another need of theirs, to see if there's a product or service that you have that might be a good fit, because that's a prime opportunity to sell them something. But what I see most businesses doing is taking it as a prime opportunity to see if you'd complete a survey.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. The survey thing is really, really popular. And I always wonder what happens to all data. It doesn't seem like anyone's changing too much based on the survey results.
No, that's exactly right. It seems more like companies are eager to pat themselves on the back for doing a good job rather than taking the opportunity to really build that advocacy with that customer or find a way that they could serve them with additional products or services.
Yeah, the surveys are a drag, and I feel like both on the consumer facing side and the business facing side, I personally had experiences where if you do take the time to fill out the survey, let's say you're on hold for 45 minutes and then you get disconnected, you call again, you're on hold for a half hour, then you get someone who helps you, and then it says, how was your overall experience? Well, it was let's say a 4, because I had to call twice and was on hold for an hour and a half, and now that poor customer service person gets fired the next day. I mean, I've literally had someone call me and say, listen, you did this survey and it reflects poorly on me. And I said, I didn't say anything bad about you. Yeah, but the overall score has got to be a 10. If it's not a 10, I'll get in trouble. And it's like, all right, so obviously that's not the point of the survey. Like, no business should want that to be the tool that they use to manage their employees' expectations of how they're performing, right? It could be an indicator, but these companies, like, they live and die by this. So it's got to be a 10, it's got to be a 5, whatever the perfect score is. And then you just get people who work at trying to get the perfect score and not trying to build the best relationship.
Yeah, that's exactly right. After all, in this relationship, you're the customer, you're the one who should be served, and they're more concerned with the results of the survey. I think it's a real missed opportunity for a lot of businesses. I think the same holds true for salespeople. Salespeople take leads that are generated. They're trying to close that business, but they also have the opportunity to say, well, is there something else that we need for you? Did you pick the right product or service? Is there an upsell, cross-sell opportunity? And I often feel that a lot of those opportunities are missed
Right.
to sacrifice, maybe that longer term relationship or the right product fit for a quick sale.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the sales staff. How many times have you called the company and you just don't get a call back? You
Yes.
want to buy something. You're not a warm lead. I mean, you're a scorching red hot lead that comes in and says, I have to get this. Someone please call me back. And you just never even get a call back.
Yes.
That happens all the time. And again, that's why that service element uh, applies to the sales staff as well. And that's kind of that intermingling. Like a salesperson also needs to be very aware of how they're affecting that buyer's journey, like you suggested earlier. It's so important that they are able to help, that they're able to make this happen, right? It's crazy to me when you see a lead not get followed up on, and that, in my mind, is, in most people's mind, is bad service. So it kind of
Yes.
goes in the service category. Uh, and obviously, with tools like HubSpot, you mentioned, I'm a big fan of HubSpot too, and it makes those follow ups so easy. It makes tracking deals very easy. It's free, which makes it really, really easy, right?
Yes.
And when you see all these missed opportunities, as a consumer, it's disappointing. It's frustrating with all the tools that are out there.
Well, we talk about buyer's journeys, we talk about flywheels, but one of the greatest sort of inventions that I think I've seen in the last couple of years is this move towards customer experience design. And there's been a lot of focus on that because I think customer experience design really incorporates a lot of what we're talking about here. It's not about a marketing effort or a sales effort or a service effort. It's talking about how that customer experiences your company as a whole. And I think it's great that there is now a focus on that because especially in larger organizations, like you mentioned before, things can easily get siloed. There's a
Hmm.
VP of marketing, there's a VP of sales, there's a VP of service, but somebody who's got a responsibility for customer experience design, hopefully they're empowered to bring those groups together.
Yeah, I love seeing that, and I do see it more and more. And you're absolutely right. Even with bigger companies, I see more job listings for it. I see more people who have the job title, customer, experience specialist, or customer journey specialist, or director of customer experience. And it is really positive to see that starting to come about. And I'm sure over the next, I mean, this is, nothing we're discussing here is a secret. I obviously, corporations are well aware of their struggles that they're having in their customer experience. Uh, Small businesses are not always aware of the struggles they have with their customer experience because they don't have the money to invest to hire someone just to do their customer experience and track that from throughout the whole journey. But it's easy enough if you're a small business owner. Just put yourself in your customer's shoes. Use your own website. Actually do the checkout process, right? Like, so many people will do this once, like they install
Yes.
Shopify and they'll go through the checkout process once when they're and they'll never look at it again. And if there's things that are wrong or broken or in the wrong spot, they'll never even know until a customer brings it to their attention. So I always kind of think of, in digital marketing, everyone always talks about the social media audit, but I kind of like the customer experience audit. Like, put it on the calendar once a month. Just take a moment and think about your customer's journey and put yourself in their shoes and go through it step by step and think, is there a way I can make this better at every single step? Google your business name. What comes up? Is there a way I can make this better? Go to your website, try to buy something and think to yourself, is there a way I can make this better? And just work through it. And if you do it on a regular basis, I think it does make a big difference and ultimately creates a better experience.
That old Japanese idea of continuous improvement, right? You
Yeah.
just have to look for those opportunities to get better. And, I just also say this, if a customer raises their hand and makes you aware of a problem, listen, because there are probably 50 other customers who don't bother, but have
Yes.
experienced the same problem. And too often, I think businesses tend to turn a blind eye to that. They say, well, this person is just a complainer. You can never make this person happy.
Right.
Usually where there's smoke, there's fire. And I see too many businesses ignoring really good feedback that could make their businesses better.
Yeah, and a great personal example of that I use a lot, and I usually don't like to mention companies' names, but for years I rented U-Haul trucks. We were a seasonal business, and there'd always be the back to school season. We always needed to rent trucks, and they were always the worst old broken down trucks with 100,000 miles on it. And I mean, for years we would use them, and then one day I couldn't get a truck there; they were out of stock, and I ended up going down the road a mile further to budget. and got this truck, 10,000 miles on it, box truck, power windows. I never went back to U-Haul, and they'll never know why they lost what seemed like a fairly loyal customer, and they never asked either. But that was one of those experiences that made me realize what you just said, is that most people will not go in and say this, I had a terrible experience. These trucks, especially if it's just mediocrity. I think mediocrity is if you're doing something really wrong, it's going to come to your attention really quick. But when you just dabble in mediocrity, no one's going to bring up to your attention. No one's going to say, "Hey, I listened to that podcast episode. It was all right. It was all right. Wasn't great. Wasn't bad. It was just all right." Right?
Just
That
all
never
right.
happens. It never happens in any customer experience. So yeah, great point. Great point.
And sometimes it can be small little things. I went out with some friends last week to Taco Tuesday at a local place nearby. And up on the board, they had their schedule for the week. And on Tuesday, it said Taco Tuesday. So we're like, well, we'll have some tacos. Oh, we stopped doing that this summer.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's November, and that's written in chalk on a chalkboard. Nobody could walk from the bar to the chalkboard to erase that there's no longer a Taco Tuesday. And just little things like that, they leave you with an impression that the business just doesn't care. And
Yeah.
that's a really dangerous thing for a business, when people think that you don't really even care about the business that you're running.
Yeah, and it's to be honest, it's easy to miss, because I'm someone who will tend, just by nature, what I do, to scrutinize things like that.
Yeah.
First thing I always look at in a restaurant is I look around the air vents,
Yeah.
and most of the time you will just see globs of dirt and stuff clinging to the ceiling tiles, and I just think to myself, just put 4 new tiles, and they're like $4 a piece for your 24-inch standard drop ceiling tile. Just replace them. But it's easy. You come home, and I look at the side of my house and I say, wow, I got some, like, I really have to power wash the house. But you don't see it. Like, when you're in it every day, you don't see it. I'm sure those people, they just don't even look at the board, because there's not a process or a procedure to say to look at it. And it's again, it's kind of like, that's a management function, and part of the service line, where it's like, hey, who's in charge of this? Who's going to every day look and make sure there's not dead bugs in the light fixtures? Who's going to make sure there's not dirt all piled up on top of things that are hard to reach? When's it going to happen? How's it going to happen? And you really have to take the time to detail those things out if you want them to actually get done on a regular basis.
I think that's such an excellent point, because I could say the same thing about my house. We can easily turn a blind eye to things that we see all the time, and that's just human nature.
Right.
I often share a story. I live down here in Orlando, Florida. We've got the theme parks down here, a big part of the community. And I was listening to a story about the president of the Walt Disney World, of the theme parks. And whenever a big new attraction opens up, he doesn't take the VIP line to go right to the front, get on the line, and see what the attraction's all about. He goes and buys a ticket, brings his family along, walks through the park, goes through the pre-show, waits in line with everybody else. He experiences the attraction with his entire family, so that it's not his perception, his biases, because he's been involved for years in the planning process. He wants to get a fresh perspective of what it would be like for a customer to experience that, and then also get the perspective of his family, who hasn't been privy to all that information. And I think if more businesses would just take that kind of approach, ask friends, ask family to give you their honest opinion on things, I think they'd be shocked at what they heard.
They would. If you want a fun game to play tomorrow morning when you go to your office or you go to your place of employment, just take a minute as if you've never been there before. Just walk in the door and then just look around like it's a new place. And I think you'll be shocked at all the things you see, and write them all down, and you'll have a good list of things to do over the next few weeks.
I think you're exactly right. Yeah, that's a great exercise. Justin, this is a fascinating conversation. I know we could talk for a long time. There are so many great examples out there, but I'd love it if you could just tell people a little bit more about where they could find you on the web, and where they could find your podcast as well.
Yeah, so it's marketingandservice.com. That's the website. That is also the name of the podcast. It's Marketing and Service with Justin Varuzzo. And that's it. I'm not. I have nothing else to really promote, other than hoping that some businesses can build better customer relationships, and hopefully take some of these tips and improve their bottom line while making a better experience for the customer.
I think that's great. I love the name of your podcast. I love that you're giving tips to businesses out there, because that's the ultimate goal of everything that we're trying to do. I know on your show and on my show, we just want businesses to be successful, and there are many tools and tips and tricks that you can use to do that.
Yep.
Justin, thanks so much for being a guest today.
Thank you for having me, Eric. I really appreciate it.